welcome. I'd like to welcome Mindy Gibbins-Klein, founder of the Book Midwife, to today's podcast. Welcome, Mindy.
Thanks a lot, Guy. Happy to be here.
Mindy, you have, again, I've been reading through your background. You have an inspirational story to tell in terms of, your own development. Again, like myself, you've come from another country. You now are based in the UK. Where did it all start for you?
Well, I was born on Fifth Avenue in New York. Don't worry, I won't do the whole year by year, but it's important because I am a native New Yorker. I like that aspect of myself, but I did choose to leave in my 20s because I love travel, and I thought I could get to a whole lot more countries if I was based in the UK. And I was fascinated by being able to build my career here and, not have to do it in another language, although I do speak some languages. It was just an adventure, and came over here in my corporate career in marketing. But after 3 redundancies and a number of challenges, I set off on my own as an entrepreneur in 2002. So that's quite a few years ago now. And I've not really looked back. I do go back to New York a lot. I've rebuilt some business stuff and got family there. But yeah, I kind of have 2 bases, and yeah, having fun, living life now.
So, in terms of coming to the UK, as they say, the US and the UK separated by a common language, that must have brought with it its own adventures.
I think the biggest thing was I chose to come here in 1991, and the UK was in the middle of a recession.
Yeah.
It was not a clever time to be trying to get business. I tried to set up my own business. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was really challenging, and I nearly ran out of money and left. But then a good contract came up, and I ended up staying. I'm not afraid of hard work, and I'm not afraid of getting out of my comfort zone. But sometimes it's just difficult. It's like pushing water uphill. And that was the first time that I realized I might not be able to control everything. But I stayed.
And what did you learn from that period in your life?
I learned that perseverance usually pays off. I'm not going to say always, but it did for me. And it's such a cliche, but you have to trust yourself, right? You have all these opportunities available, but if you're in a mindset that is negative or spiraling downwards, you can't see them, much less act on them. So I'm really lucky. I did a lot of personal development work while I still lived in the States. I was happy clappy before it was reasonably trendy, and that served me well. I just kept picking myself up, and yeah, that's what we need to do. And it's very easy for me to say this now on the other side of quite a number of challenges, but that is what we need to do. Nobody else can actually do the picking up for us.
Yeah. So 3 companies that you went through before you settled into entrepreneurship. I mean, marketing was a theme certainly through those companies, wasn't it?
Yeah, marketing and coaching. So I was really lucky to learn about coaching and to be coaching people when I was just in my 20s back in the States, coaching salespeople, which came with its own challenges.
Okay.
And I really, really enjoyed doing the work, but I think it was just the corporate. I'm not a rebel, shall we say. However, I do speak my mind, and you kind of have to fit in with the machine when you're in corporate.
Okay.
And at some point, I just thought, well, this is not working. I was about to jump into another job, and I had 2 little kids, and I thought, I don't think so. I'd never really run a successful business before, but I thought I have to try this. And of course, I started a marketing company, and it quickly morphed into the Book Midwife. Thanks for the mention. But the Book Midwife was meant to be a book consultancy and marketing service at the end of the process, where someone had written the book, they published, or they were about to publish, and the midwife normally comes in at the end of the process, if you know what I mean, not at conception. But yeah, it's my little joke. But I received one too many books that I looked at and thought, I can't market this. It could have been so much better. And a little light bulb went off in my head, because my background is really strategy, and that served me well to change the emphasis of the business. So I was doing marketing of books that were already out, oops, too late. But I was really trying to catch people at the beginning to help them with the concept or conception, and coach them through, since I was also a coach, coach them through the writing so they'd end up with a better book at the end. And eventually that took over, and I started outsourcing all the marketing work until such time as I joined a publishing company as well. And then I had a vested interest in those books doing well in the market. And, so yeah, it was an interesting journey, but I do love the beginning bit where it's all the ideas are still available to us. And we have to pick the best ones and, craft the best outline and format, and, we have all these choices. But once someone's done their book, like someone just this week wrote to me, I've written my book, can you have a look at it? And my answer is no. I won't look, because it's not the work I do. And it's kind of sad, but should have called me sooner.
And I just wanted to really emphasize, because, I wrote a book in 2005.
Great.
And so, separate thing, but at this time when you were starting up your business, this was actually quite a transformational shift in the publishing industry, wasn't it? You had vanity publishing, and then you had big publishing houses, and it was people like yourself who were actually starting to create this middle ground.
Yes, and I'm not actually talking about publishing, and this is you can be forgiven for focusing on it, because most people, especially entrepreneurs and leaders who want to write a book, want to publish. So that's, they're focusing on the end point. But you know what? Most people are at risk of never getting a final manuscript together to publish. So my emphasis and all my work is about the planning and writing stage. And yeah, there's been lots of changes in the publishing industry, and I ran one of these indie hybrid companies for 16 years. However, the key thing is making sure that somebody writes the book and that they don't take too long doing it, and it ends up the best it can be. That manuscript, not the published part, is my passion, shall we say.
And apologies, because
no, it's all right.
No, I mean, the publishing bit, as you say, is the out bit.
Yeah.
But there was no mechanism, people vanity published because they wrote something and then, or they went through the whole full-blown editing bit. And so, you were part of that movement that actually allowed people to communicate, give their messages, but actually do it in a professional way, bringing those editing skills, that clarity that you brought.
Thank you. Thanks. I mean, I was a pioneer of the book coaching industry. There was no industry. People would say to me when in the early days in 2002 and 3, why would I want to write a book? And so we were doing that whole argument. Now people, well, at least experts get that, write a book for credibility, open doors. Yeah, they get that. But back then it was like, why would I want to write a book? And then once we got them through that, they would say, well, why would I need help? So it's changed, thanks to myself and 4 or 5 key people who just persevered, like I say, and now it's a thing. And I mean, we, the professionals, feel somebody would be silly not to get help, advice, and guidance right from the start. But many people do. They're what I call over-empowered, overconfident.
Yes. I've got an interesting story. People are going to want to pay to listen to it. Okay.
I hear it, yeah, at least once a week, probably once a day. But now, look, if somebody's confident, that's great. But don't start wobbling right at the end. And if you're confident, go for it. But just maybe take a bit of time. The brand that I use now, which I'm sure you've seen, is the Thoughtful Leader.
Yeah.
And thoughtful leadership means putting in extra thought, taking the time, not rushing through something and then oops, like I've had to learn it. I mean, growing up and starting my career in New York with all love and respect to all my New York clients and friends and relatives. It is quite fast paced, and we're conditioned there to just, move too fast. So thoughtful leadership, I'm delighted that I'm bringing that back to New York, but I needed to learn it for myself and just slow down a bit and be thoughtful and strategic about what you're producing and how and everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
And one of the things that fascinates me is, Mindy, is that, you're at the emergence of this new industry, this new way of thinking. How do you overcome those sort of natural barriers that, why do I, as you said, people saying, why do I need this? What's the advantage? What value do you give me? How do you overcome that?
I think there's a healthy percentage of leaders, a healthy respect for professionals. And so it kind of works out. Coaching and mentoring of any kind is not for everyone. No. People who are, like I said, a bit overconfident, they're not open to feedback, they don't seek it out, and they don't work with us coaches and mentors, right? Anybody who's listening to me who's a coach or mentor is nodding their head furiously.
Absolutely.
Because, it takes different kinds of people. So we all work with people who are experts. They know their stuff, but they're doing something they've not done before, be it start a business, write a book, sell a business, all kinds of things. And I've hired probably 12 to 15 coaches and mentors in my career, currently working with at least 3. It's just a respect and appreciation that somebody can bring something new and help you be better and achieve more and faster and all that stuff. So I don't try to convince anyone these days. It's funny because my career started in sales and marketing and training salespeople to persuade. And I'm done. I wrote a book called Thoughtful Persuasion year before last, and I'm so done with persuasion generally. I do my thing, and then people respond, and there are enough people out there to do business with, right? I mean, you will have experienced this, Guy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It works out.
Yeah. If you have to sell something too hard, then
forget it.
You're always struggling from that point forward.
Yeah.
So early 2000s, starting your own business, 2 young children. Yep. I mean, that's a lot to take on. How do you cope?
Back then, I'm not sure I coped that well, but I did my best, as we do. It got easier and easier, obviously, for any listeners who have kids, it does. I mean, you get other challenges, but, the physicality of having to, lift them and drive them and sort every problem out for them, that diminishes a bit. And I was able to build the business and the brand. I had a team around me who did all the things that I wasn't good at. And we just built it. It probably took longer than if I hadn't had the kids or I hadn't made that a big part of my life. I know people say, you can't have it all. I disagree, but I think that, you have to be realistic. If I had given my work I don't know, 30 more hours a week, yeah, I could have built it like that, but at what cost? So it was fine. And I think in the past 10 years or so, yeah, I've been an empty nester. My husband and I are empty nesters for 12 years now. I keep saying 10, but it's 12 years. So there really are no obvious demands on our time like that. We work for ourselves. We're part of the same consultancy business. We have all these options. So I'm taking more time, like I was saying, being thoughtful about what I want to do, the clients we take on and things like that. You just have to get through those stages. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't go back there and associate with the emotions. I know that we must have had challenges, but I'm focused on today and moving forward.
Well, and that comes through very loud. I mean, that
Yeah.
sort of future focus. There's a sense of optimism that
Yeah.
clearly comes from you, and a sense of almost can do. These are just
Yeah.
you have to get on and do, and
Thank you. I'm not sure if eternal optimist is still part of my LinkedIn description. I had it there for a long time, but
right.
many people didn't understand what it meant, or they dismissed it like, oh, you're not living in this world. Anyway, I am at heart an optimist, and it gets you through the tough times. But people need strategies. I was lucky to learn these from Tony Robbins 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And went through all the levels of his training events, served at events, joined the leadership team.
Gosh.
I know I'm blessed to have had that, and
Oh.
other mentors, but mostly Tony. Not everybody has that, but now there's access to so much with podcasts and books, audiobooks. People really they don't understand how much they can develop themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course you do.
It always surprises me, and I absolutely adore and get great joy out of coaching. But there's an element of it that I'm always thinking, well, this stuff is, I can give you practical advice, but there's actually a lot of the stuff available to you without having to go through me.
Yeah.
I can add some value, lots of value, but fundamentally, the world is a very different place from when you and I were at university.
Well, what, just 10 years ago, you mean?
just over 10 years ago.
I'm thinking that somebody has to have the will or the intention
Absolutely.
to better themselves, so that we can't give them. But then once that door creaks open a bit and they think, oh, maybe I could change something about my life. Then there are so many resources available to them, to all of us.
Absolutely. So, started the new business. How does that progress?
So the business, like I say, it kind of hobbled along. It built slowly. It did what it needed to do, but then it really took off. I had some strategic partnerships with some key people in the industry, and that was great because we complemented each other and brought more value to the world. I ended up selling the publishing company because running those two businesses was really time consuming, and my passion is more for the coaching, like I said. So that was great because the authors got transferred to another decent publisher who I respected, and their books were still in print. That was the main thing.
Yeah.
And I freed up something like 30 hours a week of my time.
Wow.
And any listener now thinking, wow, 30, yeah, what could you do with 30 extra hours available to you that had been taken up by that company? So these are the kinds of things that, we can think about and plan for. Mm-hmm. I could have waited another 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years, sold it for millions and millions, that would have meant I didn't have the time I have. So I was already running the Thoughtful Leader, which is it's the brand I use for leaders who aren't going to write a book. So I use that with SMEs and business leaders and their teams. It's the same methodology to think through, and thanks for picking up on that, the ideas and getting the content and messages together, strategizing how they want to build their profile, and working with the individual team members, which is something that not a lot of mentors and trainers do, I think. So that I enjoy putting the I back in team. I wrote an article last year, and I've made it into a PDF that I send out. And the title is, yes, there is an I in team, because we've all heard this, there's no I in team. You forget about the individual at your peril. And that's my work, and it always has been. So I'm kind of back to my roots, working with team members. They're not all in a sales team. But I can also help would-be authors thinking about the bigger picture, thinking about their entire thought leadership strategy, or what I call their thoughtful leadership strategy, because thought leadership, is a term that has been overused and abused. So, I wrote The Thoughtful Leader. I'm doing this work to raise the level of consciousness, and also the quality level of thinking in thought leadership. So, yeah.
What does this mean so at a very practical level, because that again is coming through as a theme from you, that this is a very practical approach to leadership.
Yeah.
What does that look like for one of your clients, one of your coachees?
Well, part of the work I do is gathering people who recognize a need to be more thoughtful in their words, in their speaking, in their actions, in their writing. So that's the first bit. Is, I've created a bit of a community around myself of people who really do care about quality. And that is the kind of table stakes you need to be part of my world. So I run lunches, I run meetings and events, conferences, coaching calls, Zoom calls, ad hoc events. I try to add as much value as I can to, you want to hear the cute phrase, good people doing great work. And that has two components to it.
Yeah.
Good people with good values and ethics. And, will I measure it? No, but they sort of self-certify as being that kind of person. And they're doing great work, and they want to do more great work and get that work out there in the market. Hence my marketing background comes in. But it really is about helping them think about things differently. Pushing their thinking is one of the things we teach. So people, we're all conditioned to, like I say, move fast, come up with the fast response, the clever little phrase, the cute little rhyming things. But where's the depth and the substance? It requires more thought. It requires some effort, some energy. And so I teach these methods for people who care enough about their clients, their audiences, to put the time in to create better quality books, articles, podcasts, videos, keynotes, whatever they're doing. And then they are actually feeling better about what they're putting out there. And, I'll just take a moment to acknowledge there are some people out there who are saying, just post every day, just get lots of stuff out there. And I'm a believer in, sometimes less is more. Sometimes more is more, but unless it's top quality that you feel really proud of, don't put it out there. Don't post. Don't post for the sake of it. Please don't write a book for the sake of it. Don't take shortcuts with your brand integrity. I could rant for another hour, but I just, please think about your brand and your integrity. That's my plea for all leaders out there.
And do you find, because you talk about formal ways of communication, but that must flow into everyday language, that must flow into the interactions that those leaders have with their teams?
Gosh, Guy, you are one of the 5% of people who pick up on that, and thank you. It it is, and this is the value of doing strategic work on your stuff. I don't care, work with whoever, work with me, work for anybody, work with anyone out there. But once you've done that thinking and planning and, mapped out your deep messages, the things that resonate, that, all my branding colleagues, use words with, like alignment and authenticity and, yes, all of that stuff. Once you've done that work, you then have that blueprint, that plan. You can then bring it into everything. And, I think it does seep into everyday interactions, because I do a lot of podcasts, not all as brilliant as this one. I do a lot of speaking. I shouldn't say a lot. I do strategic speaking gigs. I talk about this stuff and write about this stuff all the time. So of course, those insights get a little sharper, the way I put things across. Yeah, they must come out in my everyday conversation. So, but thank you. Very few people think about that. They either are thinking, I want to write a book that hits #1. And I'll tell the listeners a secret. Best book is way more important than bestseller. Focus on best book, and it might become a bestseller, but that depends on marketing.
Yeah.
Right. Back to the core topic. What's available to us is so amazing, but it does come back to what we were talking about, which is being aware that we need to keep developing ourselves, put that time and effort in. Not everybody's willing to do it. And I speak about that a lot because everybody wants to stand out. The first way you can stand out is be willing to work on yourself more than the average person, which isn't hard.
Yes.
Yeah, I have lots of opinions like that, but I've seen them work. I've seen the people who really put in the time, effort, energy, determination. I spend half my life praising and acknowledging and celebrating my friends, business friends online. Every day you'll see me, raving about the work they're doing, those that have done this work, because they deserve to be celebrated. That's what, your product, your service, your launch, your offer, it doesn't always land, but it's never a waste of time to put in that thinking, that quality thinking and effort. Never.
And as you say, there are so many very good people out there with good intentions, great values, and helping them bring that to life, allow them and give them the skills to show that to the world, can only ever be a good thing.
Yeah, I love it. Some people say, oh, Mindy, why aren't you doing more speaking? I like being in the background and, helping others rise. I speak where it's strategic, where I'm invited to do something that fits with my work. And I write when I feel like it. I've been commissioned to write a few books, and I've done some off my own back, and, but it's not for the sake of it, like I was saying before. And I get such a kick out of seeing other people, good people, do well with their great work. That's why I do what I do.
And I wanted to just briefly touch on your is it 15 books you've?
Yeah, I have written and co-written 15 books. I've become more thoughtful, as you might imagine, and not wanting to just churn stuff out. I am going to be leading a book project next year this year. We're now into 2025. This year, where I'm again going to write a portion of it because it's about a topic I really care about. I don't have a particular number. It just kind of happened, one and then the next, and I was like, double digits, 15. It's not about the number; it's about each one adding value. But I'm sure we all know that.
Absolutely.
Ooh, somebody wants you. That's great.
Always good. First time that's ever happened.
It's lovely. Yeah, I think mine's on silent.
Well, yeah, and mine usually is, but as I say, uh,
Yeah.
things happened. But anyway, so in terms of the future, what does that look like for you at the moment?
Well, I'm living in the future, not to sound like a sci-fi film, but which I love, by the way. I was determined to start traveling more because, travel is such a passion of mine, like I was saying. But we had to put things on hold and be sensible and build the business and, make sure the kids got through school and all this. And now I don't work flat out. I freed up all this time. So we do travel a lot. And there are some trips planned for the future, including your home country, which I'm excited about. It seems so far from the UK,
Yes.
New Zealand. Is it about as far as we can go?
Yes. Yes.
Antarctica, maybe.
Apart from
Well,
Antarctica.
yeah, yeah.
And,
Well, no,
and
we're not
even
planning
then,
to go there.
even then, you have to go to New Zealand first. So
We have been looking forward to it. It was actually canceled during COVID, well, due to COVID. And then we rescheduled it. And I was so excited we were going to be going in 2022. And then our trip was via Japan, and Japan didn't open up. So it was canceled again and postponed again. And I know. I think, like anything that you wait for and you anticipate, it'll be worth all that much more when we finally get there. I mean, it would have been great in 2020, but it wasn't meant to be. So, that's on the cards. Lots of travel.
good.
I have, I used to teach goal setting. So, of course, I do my goals, not just in January, but whenever I feel like it. And I look at them and I've achieved, so many things. But I always have an ongoing goal list. And one of them, the other day I was looking and I wrote to write and publish novels, fiction, because my very first book was, we didn't even talk about it, but many people know this story. It was kind of in honor of a friend of mine who developed epilepsy and took his own life. And I didn't want to expose the family. And so I turned it into fiction. And it was fun to kind of use my imagination, but also get the important message out there about supporting people who are going through stuff. And I've always wanted to write more fiction, but I've seen it as a bit self-indulgent. It's like, we work with expertise books now where you can make a direct link to business. But, I have the time, I have the space, so maybe because, maybe I'll start doing it and I'll think, oh, actually, I prefer writing business books. So that's a maybe. We've started dancing. My husband and I do swing dance. So we work with a fantastic community called Jive Swing. If you're in the UK, jiveswing.com. Yeah, give them a little plug. But it's changed our lives. We've only been doing it, less than a year and a half. But there's festivals, we dress, vintage, dress up and do the dances, and it's so lovely. So yeah, there's more to life than just business, right? Is that
Really?
true? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so literally, there's a whole different raft of new experiences looking forward. Then.
Yeah, and there'll be more. And the dance stuff was not on the radar, and it was just because we were at a ski trip. And we met a bunch of dancers and we got on with them. And I was in a lesson with many of them. And the next year, it just so worked out that their trip was more convenient. So we thought we better learn to dance. And it kind of started like that. And they do a different style, as it turns out. So now we're kind of torn. We have too many evenings where, dancing should be taking up a part of it. But you have to be open to these things. And so isn't that funny? That's the same message that we were talking about before in a different context, but being open to, developing yourself, being open to new opportunities. Yeah, that's my conclusion anyway.
And that's a great segue into, what sort of messages would you give your 20-year-old self, the one that's starting out, leaving New York?
There was one thing I used to do in my 20s, and it's related to not taking the time to think. Being impulsive is fun sometimes, but not with your mouth. Sorry, That doesn't make sense at all.
Makes enormous sense,
Oh,
actually.
you know what I mean? Yeah, saying something and then regretting the way it came out. I do speak with a lot of pauses. I do. Apparently, some people said the way I speak puts people to sleep. I don't think so. I think if the message is riveting enough, they will be engaged. But I don't want to race through my speaking and speak without thinking first. So I've actually changed that, and I would tell her, slow down. But she was smart enough to move away from New York, which maybe wasn't the only solution, but that seemed the easiest way to access something different. That's probably, that covers it all, is if you slow down and think things through and be intentional, you'll have fewer regrets, maybe.
Wonderful. Well, that is wonderful advice. And just again, having sort of seen and your career, having looked through what you've achieved, there's some themes in terms of positivity, in terms of learning, in terms of trying things, not being afraid to fail, I think sort of fits in there as well. These are wonderful life messages.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And as I said to you right at the beginning, my joy, from I'm doing these podcasts for a number of reasons, but one of them is very selfish. I learn a heck of a lot, and I'm inspired, and I feel really privileged to listen to people's stories, because we are all very exciting. We've all got something to offer the world.
Well, that's definitely true. You and I have been connected for a long time, and I'm very happy to help you launch the podcast, and excited how many people can benefit from you and your guests' wisdom and insights. So yeah, thanks for starting it.
My pleasure. And any last words before we finish?
Yeah, it's something I usually say to audiences, and it sounds counterintuitive, but don't listen to us. You've been listening to us, but what I mean by that is, if you've been taking notes, or if you've been inspired, don't just listen to us and do everything we spoke about. And it goes back to what I was saying before. Stop, think, give yourself that time and space, be more thoughtful and intentional. And then, yes, if you want to act on everything Guy and I were talking about, go for it, but think first.
Oh, Mindy, thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure.
You are welcome. Bye, everybody.